What's good, guys? Welcome back to another video. It's a new week, and you know what that means. We have new opportunities on Bitcoin. So I'm going to break this all down, not only the weekly kind of setup on Bitcoin, but also the daily setup and what I'm going to be looking for on Bitcoin this week. Now, before we get into it, just a heads up. If you've been following me for a while and you know that the system works, but you are also aware that you are missing a few pieces to the puzzle in order to piece everything together, and if you would just like access to the full 75% win rate system, then just click the first link in the description box down below. This is just something that's going to get your trading consistent, and you have until the end of this week to consider it before, we close doors. But with that out of the way, if you're new here, my name is Xuan. I have a 75% win rate on all of these trade calls that I've been making on YouTube. So chances are, if you're new here, you're probably in the right place because I tend to be right just a tiny bit more than I'm wrong. But now, without any further ado, let's actually get into the video. So we're going to kick things off on the weekly chart, which is basically showing us a bullish weekly bias at the moment. Now, this is exactly, another, yet another week. At this point, I might even just consider doing a keeping track of how accurate I am with the weekly bias. And honestly, like, it's not even that I am skilled or whatever, it's just this concept known as power of three. It just works. And once again, we have another week, which I lost count how many weeks we've gotten this right at this point, but another week where we're right in terms of the weekly bias. And of course, with last week's bullish candle close, we are going to be anticipating a bullish weekly bias for this week. And not only that, we still have this target over here at basically close to 67,200 that I do expect to sweep sometime during this week. Now, I don't know if we will get it, but this remains to be the target as long as we continue putting in bullish weekly bias. So in terms of this, the way that this is going to apply to us is that we're looking for Monday, Tuesday, maybe even Wednesday to kind of dip below the weekly open, which, by the way, this is the weekly open. You want to look to dip below, and then you want to take advantage of some sort of a move down here and ride an expansion towards the upside, kind of like what we did last week, where this was the weekly open, price ended up coming down, buy low, and then you eventually sell high. This is how you take advantage of the P03, and that's what we're going to be doing. Now, is that going to impact our intraday trading immediately? Probably not, but it's good to keep in mind that, okay, if Monday and Tuesday starts going down into some sort of a key level, or maybe we sweep out some sort of very important liquidity level, then we might even want to look for that, anticipate that to be the low of the week, and then for price to head towards the upside from that point onwards. Now, we're not going to know that fully clearly until we actually go into the lower timeframes. And lower timeframes aside, it's also good to consider what sort of news we have this week. And we have absolutely zero USD red folder high impact news, which is a bit unfortunate, which also means that the kind of overall probability of this entire week is going to be a little bit lower as compared to a regular week where we are going to have red folder news for the USD. I'm not sure why we don't have red folder news here. Maybe if I can, kind of figure out if there are any orange folder news, maybe that might give us some opportunity. And even orange folder, we have Thursday unemployment claims, and that's about it. So one piece of orange folder news, I've been making these videos for a while at this point. I don't know if it's because of the war going on in Iran where, it's kind of restarted, but I have not seen a week where we have absolutely zero red folder news outside of the last week of the year. And even during the last week of the year, heading into the new year, or maybe even, Christmas week, there's still news being released, although the market's not really moving much. So yeah, this is going to be a very rare week. So I think we just have to, trade the price action. And that's also why I did that analysis on, the power of three. It comes in handy when we can reasonably expect, okay, bullish weekly bias. If we somehow sweep the liquidity levels that I've marked out over here, then, we can anticipate price going towards the upside. With that out of the way though, let's actually get into the daily setup for this week. And so far, we have a bearish daily bias, although based on what I can see immediately from the lower time frames, my initial instinct is to just say today is going to be a no trade day. The reason why I say this is because today is not only a Monday, but it's also a non-news Monday into a no-news week. Now, just to explain what that actually means, basically, I've been publicly documenting the success rate of all of these calls that I've been making here on YouTube as well as on X. And basically, I don't lose very often, but when I do, it tends to come on a Monday, and especially on a Monday that has no news. The reason being is that Mondays are kind of like the opening range of the week. It kind of sets the tone for the rest of the week. And just to explain what that means, essentially, Monday tends to give a little bit of a false move, or it just kind of sets a Monday range where Tuesday, maybe you manipulate below the Monday range, and then that kind of sets the low of the week, right? I'm just using kind of weekly profiles and daily profiles here. So if you don't really understand that, don't worry. It's just that Monday, especially when you don't have news, tends to be lower probability as compared to a day like Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. Another way we can think about this is that, for example, we don't usually trade the Asia session on Bitcoin or a lot of charts, right? at least if we can avoid it, we don't really trade the Asia session. That's because Asia tends to set the tone for the rest of the day. For example, we would usually look for, like, let's assume that this is Asia. If we're bearish for the day, we would actually look for London to sweep above the Asia highs. This will become the manipulation so that we can sell high and then buy low. Essentially, Asia accumulates, London manipulates, New York distributes, right? That's the typical session profile for the day. If you want to think of it this way, Monday is equivalent to Asia, where, whatever Asia does, doesn't really matter. We wait for Tuesday or Wednesday, where we get some sort of a manipulation, depending where we are on the weekly bias, and we look for a manipulation followed by a distribution. Usually, the MD portions of the AMD pattern tends to be a lot easier to trade and a lot more predictable compared to the A portion of the AMD. And Monday, you can think of it as the AMDX portion. Now, that also leads me on to another, kind of theory that you may have potentially heard of, which is quarterly theory, right? Again, Monday is kind of like AMDX, Tuesday M, Wednesday D, and Thursday tends to be either a reversal or a parabolic continuation. I know if that sounds like a lot of mumbo jumbo, don't worry. Just keep in mind that even if the price action were to align today, the probability of this entire day in general is going to be lower. And just taking a look at the price action, we can see clearly that some liquidity levels have been swept. In fact, these liquidity levels were all the way back from Friday. So usually once you sweep out a liquidity level, you do anticipate price actually going towards the upside. Problem is, well, two problems actually. First of all is that with regard to the system, this is actually a bearish order block, which means when price gets into here, we're actually anticipating price to go lower. This is coupled with the fact that today we have a bearish daily bias, right? If we just take a look at the candle close from Sunday, which is yesterday, it is bearish, which means we're supposed to be looking for shorts today. Not only that, but this is also a strong high. So even though this liquidity level has been swept here, if we were to take a trade today, it would be towards the downside. Now, personally, I am most likely not going to be looking to take anything, but if I did, I would take one of two setups. The first of which is right here at this bearish order block right here, or at least this potential bearish order block, where you're going to want to look for price to actually get a candle close below this level right here at 63,900. If you do, that is going to be validating this as a potential bearish order block, and you can actually use this as resistance, right? Enter here, stop here, and you target for 2R. Now, secondly, you want to ideally, you want to wait for price to come into this upper order block, which is at 64,400, and then to use this order block as the resistance level instead, because of everything that we've already laid out beforehand. Like, essentially doesn't look particularly bullish, and everything just kind of points towards the bearish direction. Now, if I really do see like a high probability setup, I will definitely update you guys on X, which, by the way, like all of my trade calls and like if I do end up getting into any trades, I'm going to be posting them on X, so feel free to just follow me there. Overall, like, even if I do get into any trades, I would highly recommend you guys go for just half risk. Again, it's non-news, and it is also Monday. Just because price action aligns doesn't mean that this is the highest quality day. Hey, if an opportunity presents itself, we're still going to try. And obviously, like, beyond a 2R target, I know you guys always love to ask me this. What is, in my opinion, what is the good TP? And in this case, it is at $62,500. This is the Friday low, and it's just a really clear liquidity level. Even if you take a look at this from the daily chart, this is just really straightforward. Which, just on a side note, thank you all who took some time to drop a comment on last Friday's video. Like, just know that I read every single comment, and I really appreciate all of the kind words. Like, it really does mean a lot to me and does help to keep me going, especially because last week was a little bit rough, and yeah, I was definitely slightly annoyed by some of the comments from last week. So just from the bottom of my heart, thank you. And like, yeah, let's get back into the rest of the video. Just one other thing to keep in mind, obviously this entire setup here would be completely invalidated if you get a candle close above 64,800. This should be pretty self-explanatory. Now, if there's one other kind of like bonus thing that I would like you guys to take away from this video, is that this week, while we do not really have red folder USD news, we do have a lot of news across the board on other assets. For example, today at 8:30 a.m., we're going to have news on USD Canadian. And this has been one of the top performers for me personally over the last few months, because every time it trends, it just trends so cleanly to the point where, like, yeah, it almost makes you wonder why you're even wasting time on, other assets. And as you can see right here, whenever it trends, it's just really clear trends, right? For multiple weeks in a row, it just goes straight in a singular direction. And right now, it's pretty clear that it is bearish so far. If you take a look at the weekly bias, it's also bearish. If you take a look at the 1 hourly chart, you're very clearly heading back into some sort of bearish order block right here. So you have time frame alignment, you have news, and you have just everything's aligned. And USD Canadian has been trending like just really cleanly. In times like this, I tend to even just ignore Bitcoin, especially if there's not as clear of a setup, and I just go for other assets, right? Again, we are not married to any sort of asset. We just trade whatever is most likely to give us a good outcome. And so because of that, we tend to go for the ones that have red folder news, because when there's red folder news, people like a lot of the market participants out there are going to be looking at the chart and like, okay, I don't know what's going to happen on USD Canadian today, but I know that something big is probably going to happen. Or like there's going to be a big move sometime around 8:30 a.m. And as traders, that's what we live for, right? We live for volatility. As long as there's volatility, we can make a living. So USD Canadian, as you come back into this order block right here, starting at 140 on like 1.403, you're going to be looking for some sort of a short, just targeting these current daily lows at the moment, which is going to give you very easily a 30 to potentially even a 40 pip move. Like if we were to zoom out a little bit, nah, not really. Yeah, easily can give you a 30 pip move, which is more than enough to make a really decent kind of profit day. So that's what I would recommend. Like, don't get married to Bitcoin. Just because I make Bitcoin videos doesn't mean that's all I trade. Like, if anything, I am trading Forex very actively. It's just I don't make videos about it because the name of this channel is like The Art of Crypto. But if you guys would love me to, talk more about Forex, especially heading into this week, after all, I exist here. I make these videos to help you guys make more money trading. If the opportunities are not going to be in Bitcoin, I'd love to talk about it. But you guys let me know if you guys would like to see it. But with that said, just a heads up, the Blueprint Summer Intake is going to close this week. So check out the first link in the description box below before we close. And especially if you're ready to take your trading to the next level by working directly with me. Cheers. Ciao, ciao.